A frightening world, a financially dystopian future where the rich and powerful control all. American author Carol Roth has dived deep into the predictions that have come out of Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum. She's written the extremely timely book, You Will Own Nothing, to help people create a plan to fight back and preserve their wealth. Love it. She joins us now. Carol, great to see you. Thanks for coming along. Now, just tell us briefly, a lot of people go, oh, the World Economic Forum, it's just this kind of weirdo, eccentric millionaires think tank up in the mountains there. They have a few get-togethers. Just ignore it. They're not dangerous. How dangerous, in your opinion, you've researched it, how dangerous is Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum?
Well, when I first heard this floating around social media, I just assumed it was taken out of context, because if you think about who the World Economic Forum is, it's littered with the business and political elite. So there was no way they could be predicting the end of private property by 2030, right? But property and ownership creates wealth. And it really didn't take very much research to find out that, sure, that was in fact what they were predicting. And it's something that they have been repackaging, frankly, since 1971. I mean, you have to give Klaus Schwab a ton of credit for at least being persistent with his awful ideas. And so he keeps repackaging this concept of being a stakeholder, which is a weasel word for somebody who doesn't take any risk and who doesn't have any skin in the game, wanting to direct what's going on. And I think as the global financial order shifts, the WEF and the UN and other organizations become increasingly more dangerous, because they're all trying to jockey to hang on to their own wealth and power. So they're putting out ideas that really end up infringing on things like our freedom and our ownership. It may not be their starting point, but in trying to keep those stakes for themselves, we're all sort of cannon fodder.
James.
Carol, tell us a bit about some of the avenues with which this basically a huge shift of wealth, power, and control is going to take place. I'm really interested particularly in the whole idea of a central bank digital currency where all of our money, is on the blockchain or something. And it's sold as like crypto, but it's not crypto. And essentially, it's like a social credit currency where if, they don't like what I wrote in the paper tomorrow, I can't go and buy, a burger.
Yeah, that's where You Will Own Nothing really connects all the dots, because when you talk about social credit, or you talk about ESG, or you talk about home ownership, or whatever it is, it all really can be controlled with a central bank digital currency, which means the central bank really controls access to the money. Think about, any Australian dollar that you might spend, and imagine it has a microchip in it, and your government can, or the central bank can look at that and go, well, you know what, guys, you've eaten too many burgers today, and we really don't think that meat's bad for or we think that meat's bad for the planet, so we don't want you to have access to that. Or there's rampant inflation. Well, instead of us, messing with interest rates to destroy demand, we're just going to not let you have access to your spending. That's the kind of level of control we're talking about. And then when you bring in these components like social credit on top of it, it really becomes frightening from an agency and a sovereignty standpoint, because if you do not have control of the money, if they have control over it at that level, they really do own you. And so when I ask my followers on Twitter and I talk to people around the world about the thing that most concerns them, it is this idea of further centralization of the currency and the complete control, whether it is country by country or, God forbid, a one world central bank digital currency where, it's all controlled from the IMF or whomever it is. But that idea that they can control the money and, we have to find some other way to maneuver around it really is that top concern for people.
Carol, I'm interested in Klaus Schwab. Like, who is he? Where does his power come from? Why do world leaders flock to his forum? I mean, he's never been elected to anything. Where is his power base from?
I don't know. You mean I think you like him, Rita, because he looks like that Bond villain that's Aston, right? I mean, it's like the perfect, like, who is this guy? But he was an engineer, and he came up with this idea of stakeholder capitalism back in 1971. So we give him credit for being persistent with ideas and trying to repackage them. And he started something called the European Management Forum. And as geopolitical events sort of unfolded during the 70s, he started inviting political leaders. So I don't think that he started out with any real power or connections himself. He was just bringing people together. And since he was that connector person, and he had access, I guess, to Davos, Switzerland, which is a nice place to have a boondoggle and maybe have some caviar, he became the center of more and more things. And over the years, because of his persistence, he's now at this center of this World Economic Forum, and it really is the center of hypocrisy. They talk about things like CEOs being overpaid, but his salary is 1 million Swiss francs, which is about the equivalent to, or excuse me, 1 million Swiss francs, which is about the equivalent of $1 million US. So everything they talk about, if you think about the prediction, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, it's not will own nothing. They don't include themselves in there. He has aligned himself with the business and political elite so that he can be seen as, part of this different group of people who are smarter and need to be in charge of all of these ideas. And the worst part about this is that because so many different people are involved, I don't think that a lot of the CEOs and business leaders who go there even really understand what the WEF is doing and saying. They become these sort of useful idiots that carry back these ideas, not realizing how damaging they are, or at least thinking that maybe because, somebody in the organization, like a BlackRock who's tied to the WEF and has control of a lot of capital, will, not punish them by not allocating capital to them. So a lot of the people don't really understand all of the elements that those of us who've taken a deep dive into this, see. Plus, they're benefiting. So, human nature, they want the power, they want the wealth. It's not so much that they're, actively trying to choke our freedoms. They just don't care. They're just trying to make sure that they're on top.
James?
And Carol, tell me how much, we hear a lot of people saying that this is a conspiracy theory, but if you look at lots of things that are happening, it's not just governments, it's also corporations that are going down this road. There's some of the car companies, for example, automobile manufacturers are saying you won't own the car, you'll have a license to it. And basically, you sort of rent everything at the behest of big corporations, which then, are tied in to this whole sort of movement. So nobody actually has any assets and nobody has any sort of thing that they can capitalize and build wealth off of. Tell us a bit about sort of the corporate side and how do people fight back on this?
Yeah, they do want your life to be a subscription or a service. And anytime anyone says it's a conspiracy theory, I say that it might be a conspiracy. It may be a coordinated effort, but it's not a theory. You can look at the things that they're doing and the things that they're saying. As you mentioned, car companies, I talk about in the book BMW, that in certain jurisdictions is charging for a subscription for heated seats. So you have the seat and you have the mechanism that can heat it. But if you actually want it to heat up, you have to pay for it. And then if you go to sell it to the next person, ostensibly, they have to do the same. And so you don't really have that full freedom and that full ownership. And we're seeing that in technology as well. You have a handful of companies that are really dominating the infrastructure and collecting rents along the way. And the implications of that are very scary. Think about it. There are 2 mobile operating systems that cover about 99% of the globe. If you get on the wrong side of these companies, and even though they've been, at least Apple's been good on privacy, pretty much so far, we're counting on the fact that you're not on the wrong side of them, or they don't have a shift in personnel, or that some government official doesn't say, hey, you need to do this for whatever reason they come up with. And that creates issues for us, our rights, our freedoms, our participation in modern society. So I do think a lot of this, again, is driven from the greed, from wanting the power and the wealth. but we're not thinking about the implications, and we're not thinking about protecting our natural rights in a digital forum when you have these companies, particularly tech companies, that have the scale of countries or governments, and in many ways are acting as de facto governments and providing modern infrastructure.
Carol Roth, that's so great to hear you. We just ran briefly a clip of your ad for the book, which showed all the people attacking you, all this kind of big media coming after you, which means, as I say, you must be right over the target if they're coming at you so aggressively. Keep up the great work. You Will Own Nothing. That's the book by Carol Roth. Carol, can we fight back? Can we win this very quickly?
You absolutely can. We may not be able to prevent a new financial world order, but we can certainly delay it and do what the elite are doing, not what they're saying. They're out owning everything possible. So go out, own hard assets, own land,
and flying in
what they are doing,
and flying their jets wherever they want. Exactly. Carol Roth, thanks so much for talking to us here on Outsiders.